The brutal reality of life in San Quentin Prison. San Quentin isn't just a prison. It's a world built on concrete, razor wire, and the echoes of men who never came home. California's oldest and most notorious penitentiary holds killers, lifers, and the condemned, but the truth behind its walls is far more disturbing than the headlines. This is the story of violence, redemption, survival, and the daily brutality hidden inside America's most infamous prison. This is San Quentin, as you've never seen it before. The gates of no return. If you drive north across the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge and look to your right, you'll see it before you feel it. A massive stone fortress anchored to the shoreline, wrapped in razor wire and the sharp smell of salt water. San Quentin State Prison, opened in 1852, is older than almost every institution in California. Older than the state's public school system. Older than most of its cities. It was built when stagecoaches ruled the roads and California was still a frontier. And somehow, 170 years later, it is still operating. Still overcrowded. Still violent. Still a place where time seems to rot instead of pass. San Quentin is more than a prison. It is the symbolic heart of the American punishment system, a living museum of the country's darkest impulses and deepest failures. Thousands have lived here. Hundreds have died here. Some never left their cells at all. The first thing you notice isn't the noise, it's the silence. A thick, heavy quiet that hangs over the yard like fog. Even today, former inmates say the air feels different inside San Quentin, denser, heavier, charged. Almost as if the walls themselves remember everything that has happened inside them. A fortress built for punishment. The original prison was literally built by prisoners. Men chained together, digging trenches and laying stones under armed supervision. San Quentin was never meant to rehabilitate. It was designed to break, to house people the 19th century state believed could not be saved. It quickly became notorious. Public hangings were performed here until 1938. The gas chamber was installed in 1938 and operated for decades. Death row became the largest in the United States. Some of the most violent riots in California history erupted inside these walls. By the 1980s and 1990s, San Quentin held far more men than it was designed for. Cells built for one person held two. Inmates slept in gyms, hallways, and temporary barracks. Tension simmered constantly, racial, gang-related, territorial, or simply the tension of too many people with too little space and too much rage. A correctional officer who worked in the North Block in 1994 said, "San Quentin doesn't run on rules. It runs on pressure. If that pressure builds up, someone bleeds. The yard, lines that cannot be crossed. Step into San Quentin's lower yard, and you're stepping into a map of California's gang wars. Every patch of ground, every bench, every workout station, every shade tree, belongs to someone. Not officially. Unofficially, absolutely. The rules are unwritten but absolute. Whites stay with whites. Blacks stay with blacks. Mexicans from the north stay with northerners. Mexicans from the south stay with southerners. Others find a group or they risk being targeted by all of them." A former inmate said, "San Quentin is the only place where you sit decides how long you live. Fights break out fast. Stabbings faster. And the officers, outnumbered and exhausted, can only react, often too late. The weapons are handmade. Shanks carved from bed frames, toothbrushes melted and sharpened, pieces of metal smuggled from workshops. Anything can become a tool for violence if it's held with enough hate, or enough fear." Inside the cell blocks, North Block, West Block, and the Jaguar Lair. San Quentin is divided into distinct units, each with its own reputation. North Block, the largest cell block in California, a towering wall of stacked cells and echoing voices. West Block, darker, older, and infamous for its claustrophobic tiers. H Unit, Level 2 dorms, crowded and volatile. Adjustment Center, segregation and high-control inmates, often the most dangerous or most targeted. East Block, death row. Each area has its own rhythm, its own politics, its own version of brutality. In North Block, inmates describe nights where you hear metal banging for hours, shanks being sharpened before a hit. In West Block, men have woken up to fires started by rival gang members. In H Unit, fights can explode over a bowl of cereal or a stolen pair of shoes. And in the Adjustment Center, some of the most unpredictable inmates in California spend years locked 24/7 in their cells, pacing like caged animals, waiting for the next lockdown to end or the next guard to make a mistake. One former officer described the Adjustment Center bluntly. "If something goes wrong in AC, help isn't coming fast. You're on your own." The shadow of death row. But the most infamous area in San Quentin is East Block. Home to more than 600 condemned men, the largest death row in America. These prisoners live in a world entirely separate from the rest of the institution. Smaller yards, tighter control, more isolation, more silence. You can feel the difference the moment you walk into the unit. It's colder, quieter, almost religiously still. Inmates here have been sentenced to die, though California hasn't executed anyone since 2006. Their days are cycles of waiting, appeals, and more waiting. Some have been here longer than they lived on the outside. Some arrived in their 20s and are now in their 60s or 70s. A member of the death row clergy once said, "Death row is a place where time doesn't heal anything. It just erases." The irony, a prison filled with contradictions. San Quentin is brutal, but it is also strangely progressive. It hosts college programs, journalism workshops, self-help groups, the San Quentin News, coding classes, one of the country's only inmate-run podcasts, Ear Hustle. And yet, violence still erupts. Racism still dominates. Fear still rules. Because in a place like San Quentin, hope and brutality live side by side. That paradox is what makes it so infamous and so unforgettable. A day in San Quentin, survival, violence, and the unwritten LAWS life inside San Quentin doesn't run on clocks. It runs on tension. A quiet tension that sits on your chest from the first second you wake up. A tension that moves through the cell blocks like a fog, settling into every conversation, every look, every movement. A single day in San Quentin can feel like a week can feel like a year, and a year can feel like a lifetime. Because inside this prison, there is no such thing as a normal day. There are only days where nothing happened, and days where everything did. The wake-up call, 4:30 a.m. The day begins before dawn. Correctional officers march down the tiers, banging batons against metal bars, their voices echoing through 100-year-old hallways. Count time. Count time. Stand up for count. This roll call is repeated throughout the day, sometimes 6 times, sometimes 8. Because inside these walls, numbers matter more than names. An empty cell during count could mean anything. An escape, a stabbing, a suicide. Inmates groan awake. Some stretch. Some pray. Some curl deeper into their thin blankets, pretending the noise isn't real. In San Quentin, sleep is currency. You never get enough of it. You always want more. Breakfast, a test of patience and power. By 5:30 a.m., the tiers start to move. Doors open. Metal clanks. Lines form. The Chow Hall is one of the most dangerous areas in any prison. And San Quentin's is the size of a small warehouse. Rows of steel tables, handcuffed men marching through metal detectors, guards watching from catwalks above. Breakfast is powdered eggs, rubbery sausage, and sometimes oatmeal thick enough to patch drywall. Most inmates don't complain. Not because they like the food, but because complaining means drawing attention. And attention can get you killed. At one table sit the Crips. Another, the Bloods. Another, the Norteños. Another, the Serenos. Another, the Whites, divided still further into subgroups. Aryan Brotherhood, Nazi low-riders, Peckerwoods. Black guerrilla family takes another corner. Race isn't just noticeable here. It's law. A former inmate put it bluntly. You don't choose a side at San Quentin. The side chooses you. The yard, where peace is an illusion. After breakfast comes yard time. The lower yard is famous, both for its violence and its strange beauty. Palm trees line parts of it. Baseball games happen next to wait stations. The bay glitters beyond the fences. It looks almost peaceful. From far away. But step inside and you learn fast. Peace is just the pause between storms. Every corner is claimed. The pull-up bars belong to one race. The basketball court belongs to another. Tables in the shade are for high-ranking members. Certain benches are off-limits unless you have permission, which newcomers don't. Even walking the yard is a test. If you walk the wrong path, past the wrong group, at the wrong time, someone steps into your path. A stare, a question, a threat, a warning. Who you with? If you don't have an answer, you have a problem. The yard is where most stabbings happen. A shank slides between ribs faster than any guard can react. It's where debts get collected, where beefs get settled, where politics get enforced. And if you're not paying attention, you don't get a second chance. The jobs, where freedom is measured in tasks. Despite its violence, San Quentin operates like a small city. Inmates cook. They clean. They run laundry. They repair furniture. They work in factories, build license plates, paint signs. and even help operate the prison's award-winning newspaper, the San Quentin News. Some inmates join college programs or rehabilitation workshops. Some join the prison's theater group, one of the only inmate theater programs in the U.S. Others join the Vietnamese Buddhist meditation group, the Native American Sweat Lodge, or Islamic Brotherhood classes. The odd part? In San Quentin, these programs exist side by side with violence. You can walk from a Shakespeare class to a gang confrontation in under 30 seconds. It is a place where self-improvement and self-destruction live on the same tier. As one lifer said, San Quentin will give you a book, a badge, or a blade. You gotta pick one. The unwritten laws, the rules no guard can explain. In San Quentin, survival depends on following a strict set of unwritten rules. Never sit at another race's table. Never borrow unless you can pay back double. Never owe anyone a favor. Never show fear. Never look too long at another inmate. Never talk to a correctional officer unless absolutely necessary. Never refuse your race if they call on you. The last rule is the most dangerous, because it forces men into alliances, into violence, into debts they never asked for. A man doing 2 years for drug possession might carry out a stabbing, because his race orders it, or risk being stabbed himself. This is how prison gangs maintain power. Through obligation. Through fear. Through consequences that extend far beyond the prison yard. Lunch, the pressure builds. By lunchtime, the tension in the prison feels heavier. Morning incidents begin to ripple. Rumors spread. Eyes sharpen. If someone got into a fight in the yard, retaliation might come now. If someone disrespected a group during breakfast, they might get checked now. And if someone is marked for a hit, the chaos can erupt in seconds. Correctional officers eat fast too. They know the entire day can flip on a single moment. One officer said, San Quentin doesn't explode without warning. It whispers first. You just gotta know how to hear it. The afternoon, the edge of calm. The afternoon is quieter. Classes are in session. Job shifts continue. Some inmates rest. But the quiet is deceptive. San Quentin afternoons often turn violent when tempers flare from morning arguments. Gangs settle internal disputes. Drug deals go bad. Pressure builds from overcrowding. Mentally unstable inmates spiral. San Quentin houses hundreds of men with severe mental illness, many untreated during the 1980s and 1990s, and still underserved today. Some scream for hours. Some talk to themselves. Some self-harm. Some are easily provoked. And the prison is not designed to protect them. A state psychologist once wrote, San Quentin is the worst place in California for the mentally ill. It is not designed to help them. It is designed to contain them. Dinner, the most dangerous time of all. Dinner is quick. Sloppy Joe, rice, chicken thighs, or something resembling stew. But many inmates say dinner is when violence peaks. Why? Because men are tired, hungry, agitated from the day. And tensions that simmered all morning finally reach their boiling point. Officers are tired too. More mistakes get made. More opportunities open up. A man bumped too hard in line. A look that lasted 1 second too long. A rumor whispered down the tier. In a place where respect is currency, any perceived disrespect can end in blood. Night, where the prison changes. Night in San Quentin feels ancient. The thick stone walls cool. Fog rolls in from the bay. Voices echo in ways that make the prison sound haunted. This is when the whispers start. Men talking quietly from cell to cell. Deals made. Contraband moved. Plans formed. Threats delivered. And sometimes, screams. Night is when the darkness of the prison becomes impossible to hide. A former inmate said, You hear everything at night. Fights. Cries. Metal scraping. That is the real San Quentin. Lockdown, the moment everyone feels small. When something happens, a fight, a stabbing, an officer assaulted, the prison goes into lockdown. Sirens blare. Orders shout over the intercom. Gates slam. Lights snap on. Or off. A lockdown can last hours. Or days. Sometimes weeks. Meals pushed through slots. Showers canceled. Phone calls denied. Yards suspended. You become a number in a box. A body in a cage. A mind pacing 6 feet of concrete, with nowhere to put the adrenaline. A correctional lieutenant once said, Lockdowns break the quiet ones. Riots break the loud ones. Either way, San Quentin breaks everyone eventually. The day ends but the pressure doesn't. In a place like San Quentin, you don't sleep because you're tired. You sleep because you're exhausted. You don't survive because you're strong. You survive because you adapt. San Quentin is a system, a machine, a world built on fear, power, and consequences. And for many men, it is a world they will never escape, even if they one day walk out the front gate. Blood, power, and redemption, the stories that made San Quentin legendary. San Quentin is not famous because it is old. It is not infamous simply because it is violent. San Quentin is a legend, feared, studied, filmed, debated, because of the stories that unfolded inside its walls. Stories of riots, murders, escapes, executions. Stories of gang kings and broken men. Stories of brutality so severe it shocked the nation. And stories of redemption so profound they changed lives. To understand the brutal reality of San Quentin, you must understand the events that carved its reputation into American history. The monster in the yard, the gang wars that defined a generation. In the 1970s and 1980s, San Quentin became the epicenter of California's gang wars. The Aryan Brotherhood, the Black Guerrilla Family, the Mexican Mafia, the Nuestra Familia, Crips, Bloods. These weren't groups. They were armies. And San Quentin was their battlefield. You don't own yourself in here. You belong to whoever can take you. Former inmate, 1987. Each group had its own hierarchy, its own rules, its own territory, its own justice system, its own definition of loyalty. And every man entering the prison was forced to pick a side, or be picked apart. Violence wasn't random. It was political, strategic, organized. Hits were ordered like business deals. Taxation enforced through fear. Debts collected with blood. One former officer described walking the yard in 1992 as standing between five armies waiting for an excuse to destroy each other. The attempted standoff, the day the yard went silent. On June 19, 1985, officers noticed something strange. The yard was too quiet. In prison, quiet is never good. It means something is being planned, or something is about to explode. That morning, the Aryan Brotherhood and the Black Guerrilla Family were preparing for a coordinated attack. Two of the most violent prison gangs in America. Two groups with a decades-long blood feud. Two armies ready for war. Weapons were hidden under benches. Messages had been smuggled for days. The target? Each other. Had the war started, officers later admitted, we would have had dozens dead in under 10 minutes. But then something unexpected happened. An inmate mediator, a respected lifer, stepped forward. He convinced leaders on both sides that if they started this war, San Quentin would never be the same again. The leaders backed down. The hit was canceled. The yard exhaled. But the silence that day became part of prison lore. A moment when San Quentin nearly tore itself apart. The Adjustment Center, the darkest corner of the prison. San Quentin's Adjustment Center, AC, is not like other units. It was designed for the most violent inmates, the most mentally unstable, the most targeted, and the most feared. Inside AC, a man can spend 23 hours a day in a cell no bigger than a walk-in closet. The lights never fully dim. The noise never truly stops. A former AC officer described it. You don't walk into AC. You step into a storm that never ends. Inmates bang on doors for hours. Some scream. Some curse. Some pray. Some talk to people who aren't there. AC has held some of the most infamous inmates in California history, including violent gang shot callers, men involved in prison assassinations, those on overflow from death row, mentally ill inmates too unstable for general population. Many who entered AC left worse. A few didn't leave at all. The execution chamber, San Quentin's most haunted room. For decades, the world knew San Quentin for one thing above all: death row. California's execution chamber has stood in multiple forms. The gallows, pre-1930s. The gas chamber, 1938 to 1993. The lethal injection room, 1996 to 2006. Hundreds of men took their final breaths here. Many died quietly. Some screamed. Some begged. Some prayed. The walls of that room have seen everything. One of the most infamous executions was that of Clarence Ray Allen, 2006. He was 76 years old, blind, deaf in one ear, and had suffered a heart attack just months earlier. But because of California's laws, the execution proceeded. The global outrage was enormous. Human rights groups protested. Religious leaders intervened. But at midnight the needle went in. Allen died at 12:20 a.m. The execution helped trigger California's moratorium on the death penalty, effectively ending executions in the state to this day. The escapes. The men who almost beat San Quentin. Only a handful of escapes have ever succeeded at San Quentin. The walls are too high. The gates too reinforced. The yard too watched. The bay too cold. But some men tried. Some came close. The 1937 escape attempt. 11 inmates overpowered guards, seized keys and made it to the gate. A shootout followed. 5 inmates died. 2 guards died. The 1980 death row escape attempt. 4 condemned men used handmade tools to cut through bars. They made it to the roof before being shot at by officers. 1 fell. 2 surrendered. 1 held out until sunrise. Escapes aren't just attempts at freedom. They are acts of desperation from men whose world has shrunk to a cage. The brutality of the 2000s, gladiator days. During the 2000s, San Quentin, like many California prisons, became notorious for staged fights. Not officially sanctioned, but effectively allowed by certain officers who believed, let the gangs police themselves. Inmates nicknamed this era gladiator days. 2 men would be released into the yard at the same time, knowing one would attack the other. Knowing the guards wouldn't intervene until someone was bleeding. Some officers later admitted that fights were easier to manage than stopping them altogether. A former correctional officer confessed anonymously, "We didn't start the wars. We just tried to survive them." The unlikely light, redemption behind the walls. For all its brutality, San Quentin has also produced some of the most remarkable stories of redemption in American prison history. Inside this violent fortress, men have earned college degrees, published newspapers, created award-winning podcasts, ear hustle, performed Shakespeare, trained service dogs, written books, mentored youth, reconciled with families, renounced gang life, built real communities, programs like The Last Mile Coding, Mount Tamalpais College, accredited education, restorative justice circles, No More Tears, KidCap, have changed hundreds of lives. A former lifer said, "San Quentin gave me trauma, but it also gave me a chance to become a man." The big question, can San Quentin change? In 2023, California officials announced a historic plan to transform San Quentin from a maximum security prison into a rehabilitation-focused facility, modeled after prisons in Norway. Less punishment, more education, more counseling, more preparation for life after release. The plan sparked controversy. Some praised it as visionary. Others condemned it as dangerous. But the truth is simple. California cannot forget San Quentin. Because San Quentin is part of California's identity. It is both a symbol of how bad things can be and how much people can change. The prison that reflects America. San Quentin is not just a prison. It is a mirror, showing us the best and worst of humanity. It is blood and hope, violence and forgiveness, cruelty and transformation. Every man who enters San Quentin is changed. Some become worse. Some become better. Some never leave. But every story inside those walls, every riot, every redemption, every death, every second chance, reveals the truth about America's justice system. It breaks. It builds, it destroys, and sometimes, it saves. San Quentin is brutal. San Quentin is historic. San Quentin is human. And its reality, its true reality, is not just about prisons, but about the people we choose to become. In the darkest places imaginable,